This episode of Dispatches from Planet Albany is brought to you with support by New York State United Teachers, which represents more than 600,000 educators and school-related professionals in New York. Dispatches is also supported by the public affairs firm O'Donnell & Associates. For more information, check out o'donnellsolutions.com.
I've also declared war on potholes, so here's the first shot across the bow.
Well, as you know, with Planet Albany, there's always something that makes the planet turn.
And it's this amazing view of D.C., and Eddie Vedder comes out, and he goes, "You have a cigarette?" And I've never smoked in my life, but if I had, I wish that was the moment.
And this strategy takes us from potholes to knotholes.
I would like to say it was a pleasure, Mr. Kim. But I'm on the road.
I'm David Lombardo, and this is Dispatches from Planet Albany, a podcast about power and politics in state government. And on this episode, we're exploring how the state budget comes together and the governor's control over year-to-year spending, especially as it pertains to closing mid-year gaps and finding so-called efficiency in state government. And if we're talking state budget, then of course we're going to want to hear from a veteran of the process. So we're lucky to be joined in the studio by former State Budget Director Bob Megna, who is now president of the Rockefeller Institute of Government. Welcome back to the show, Bob.
Hi, Dave. How are you?
I'm excellent. How are you holding up this holiday season?
It's, the holidays, so between shopping and trying to get some work done, it's a little hectic, but it's good.
Well, I imagine it's still probably a more relaxed holiday schedule than anything you experienced while working at the DOB or even further back at the Assembly Ways and Means Committee.
There's no comparison, really, so I shouldn't complain. I think it's my older kids, I think, who you probably should be asking the question to, right?
Or the therapists should be asking them.
Yeah, they're all doing fine, by the way. They're doing great. But, they didn't see me for large chunks of, end of November and December. Or we'd be driving back from my brother's house on Long Island, and we'd have to pull off to the side of the road to answer an hour's worth of questions that someone in Albany had about something. It's definitely much easier to be outside of that environment.
But now everyone is so accessible via Zoom. So is that a blessing or a curse when you think about how accessible someone can be remotely? Was there something nice to the sense that maybe you could get lost because they just couldn't reach you? And I know I'm dating you here a little bit.
That's okay. Yeah, a little bit. People would find you, right? There was a time when I was in budget. I wasn't director, but I was head of the Economic and Revenue Unit, and people had tax questions, and I needed to find some of the tax attorneys. And I knew where some of them lived. And I went to their house and got them out of their house and took them back to the Capitol. So in that way, I don't know, is that more stressful? I think it was a little bit more stressful. If I could have called them and done a video chat with them, that would have been much more efficient. So I think it is easier now, but you couldn't get lost. People would go find you.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the here and now. And this summer, the Hochul administration calculated that a $750 million hole had emerged in the current year's fiscal plan because of federal changes, specifically to Medicaid. Ultimately, that gap has been erased because of higher than anticipated revenue from taxes, delaying some spending, and other behind-the-scenes gimmick that most people are never going to know about because it's unlikely to actually impact the delivery of state services maybe they care about. When you heard about the $750 million mid-year hole, did that make you break out into a cold sweat given your past life? Or as a former budget director, do you know something like that can just be easily papered over given the size of the budget now?
I think you always have to take estimates of the deficit seriously, and I know the folks down at the Budget Division do, but $750 million on a $290 billion budget or whatever it is now is a relatively small amount. And it is their job to figure out how to eliminate those things for the governor. They're very good at it. So I think Blake and his team would look at, it's not the $750 million. It's what is it the year after and what is it the year after that. So by solving the $750 million problem, are you creating a bigger problem in the year after, or are you delaying stuff that maybe you should be thinking about doing now? I think those are always really the issues. $750 million on that size of that budget is something they can manage, and they do.
Well, yeah, one of the tools, and this is not something new to the Hochul administration, is to basically delay a payment from one fiscal year to the next fiscal year, and not with any sort of big delay. We're talking April 1, for example. Is that a good practice, or is there an issue to that?
No, it's not a great practice, and I think they know that.
What's the downside?
Well, the downside is if you keep doing it, you become New York City in the 70s, because that's what they were doing.
Yeah, but 50 years later, they're doing great.
After they fixed it,
yeah,
with a lot of pain. So, no, you don't want to keep postponing stuff and throwing it into the next year. It only gets you in trouble. But sometimes it just naturally happens. And so, again, moving a payment of a few $100 million, again, on the size of the budget that we have, that's really not a problem. That's management, right? You have to manage your cash. And they do a good job with that. So I would say, no, you don't want to get in the business of doing billions of dollars and just delaying payments, because it will catch up to you. I think, again, what they're doing downstairs now, I would guess, is they're focusing on what's going to happen over the next 3 or 4 years. And how do we bring that message back to the decisions the governor has to make now and try to give her the best advice they can. And ultimately, she makes the calls about what she wants to do.
Well, you referred to the $750 million hole as something to take seriously, which reminded me of the way people talk about President Trump, which is that you take him seriously, but not literally. So is that the way we should think about projections out of the division of budget, whether it's $750 million this fiscal year, $3 billion for the next fiscal year? Because there is some benefit to them to framing these things as maybe bigger problems than they actually are, both politically and in terms of the budget negotiations.
And I think some of that over time has happened. But again, I think you can overdo it. And then people just don't believe you, right?
Has that ever been the case in a time that you remember?
Oh, I remember even before I became budget director, when I was doing the revenue forecast downstairs, you would occasionally have, situations where there might be a strange payment cycle from, April income tax payments are so critical to how much money you're going to bring in the year. Mm-hmm. There was actually a situation which sounds like it's out of a movie, but believe me, it happened, where this was Pataki was still governor, where a literal tractor trailer of checks got unhooked at the post office and didn't get rehooked for 2 days, which meant it was a week before it showed up at the tax department and got counted. Dean, who's a good friend now, Dean Foulahan, now working for the new mayor, accused me of hiding the truck. And it was just not true. So I think timing, volatility, estimates are estimates, so they're always wrong. Is the budget division more conservative? Yes, and they need to be more conservative, because ultimately the governor has, huge responsibility with managing the finances of the state. But you can take it too far. I think people know when you're taking it too far. So you have to be realistic, knowing that the world can change very rapidly on you.
Well, I guess my skepticism or cynicism about this whole thing stems from one of the first budgets I was here for, which was Andrew Cuomo's first budget as governor. And he came in saying, we have just this huge hole. I think he was saying like a $10 billion deficit we're going to have to deal with. and basically snapped his fingers, said we found some efficiencies and we did it. I'm restoring order and competency to Albany. Was I right to take away from that maybe there was some fuzzy math, or was he really doing some heavy lifting there?
Who was the budget director then?
Who can say?
I think it was me.
Yeah.
I think there was heavy lifting that got done then. I think, remember, when the governor came in, he did not do this all at once, but he did it in his first year, and it stretched out through his whole first term.
Mm-hmm.
He kept state spending down to somewhere in the range of 2%. That was always the thing every year, right? We're not going to grow the budget by more than 2%. Before that, we probably had been growing more in the 5% or 6% range, and some years even higher. But by cutting growth and spending
Right.
down, by then doing some things with his agencies to kind of keep spending at the state level, the agency level under control, I think it was real. Those were real things. They were painful things. You know, we reduced the size of the state workforce by quite a bit over his first term. And so those were difficult, hard decisions. So yes, that was real. Were the revenue forecasts a little conservative, and so that provided a little bit of a cushion for him? Yes, that's probably true too. And so I think it was a combination of things. But no, some hard things definitely got done in that period. And remember, we were still coming out of the financial crisis when he became governor. The Spitzer folks and the Patterson folks had done a lot to eliminate a big deficit. So some of the credit actually goes to them too. But he still inherited a pretty big problem. And I think did some real things to fix it. But yes, I mean, some of it always by governors is a little bit of posturing and, you know, I could do stuff that no one else can do kind of thing. But that's, he spent a lot of time and effort on that.
Well, let's take Blake and the second floor at their word and assume we have a multi-billion-dollar hole for the coming fiscal year. The governor has said she plans on announcing more initiatives to reduce the cost of government. That probably means actually just slowing growth, like you were talking about. But based on your experience, is there any low-hanging fruit that the governor can grab unilaterally at this point, or is she going to have to convince the legislature to go along with any sort of meaningful savings?
You know, I've actually been thinking about this a little bit.
That's dangerous.
No. There's always low-hanging fruit in the sense that there are things that probably should get reduced or could get reduced. That doesn't mean they're easy to do. So in one sense, it's low-hanging fruit, but in another sense, it still has all of the political stuff associated with it. It's
some interest spending.
Exactly.
It exists for a reason, probably.
And some legislator cares about it, or multiple legislators care about it, or the majority leader cares about it. And so it's never an easy process, but there's always stuff that you know that's out there that you're not doing it as well as you should be doing it, and so you should be doing it more efficiently for less money. Or there are programs that have run their course and are not doing what they were intended to do. And you should be occasionally revisiting them. That's hard to do. None of this is easy. I think the mistake, and this is really just me, I think there's a mistake that if you're a progressive, that those kinds of looking at programs to see what's working and what isn't is kind of off the table because you're just trying to, protect the government. I think that's baloney in a lot of ways. I think it's more up to the progressives to find the things that are working because they care about government. So if you really care about government and you want government to succeed, you occasionally have to go back and revisit stuff you've been doing that's either not working or you're doing it, inefficiently.
For the holiday season, Dispatches from Planet Albany is offering a special gift when you support the show. A $50 contribution or recurring commitment of $5 a month gets you a 12x9 poster celebrating life in Planet Albany. More information, including a link to donate, can be found wherever you listen to this podcast. Support for Dispatches from Planet Albany provided by National Fuel. Natural gas delivers affordable, reliable energy to millions of New Yorkers every day. Trusted utilities are committed to keeping homes warm, businesses running, and communities thriving. Natural gas is a critical part of an all-of-the-above energy strategy, one that prioritizes sustainability for the Empire State's future. Learn more at betterplannobans.com. Well, sticking with that idea of things that aren't working or are being done inefficiently, in the fall, the budget director put out a letter to agencies' offices and basically said, are there rules and regulations that maybe don't need to exist anymore? And I wonder what your expectations are for what they're actually going to hear back from state agencies and departments and offices. Is there any chance they get a whole host of meaningful things that can be addressed? Because like you said, there's probably a reason that these things haven't gone away. There is somebody who cares about this stuff.
Yeah. The cynical side of me says that he'll get a lot of requests back to increase the number of regulations and stuff that he has. But that's the cynical side of me.
Well, those commissioners might not be around much longer if that's how they respond.
No, but what they will do, I think, often, and I'm not saying these commissioners, I think the governor's done a great job in getting commissioners she really wants in these positions. But, in the past, if you say to someone, get rid of the bad stuff, right, they'll come back to you and say, I'd love to do that. But what we really need to do is tweak the stuff we're already doing over here to make it better, and then we can gradually get rid of that bad stuff. When you hear that, alarm bells should really go off in your head that you're really just layering on to what you're already doing. Now, I don't think commissioners or agencies are doing this out of some ill will. They're trying to protect what they're doing in serving the public. So there's that constant tension there. And so, does it look like they're resisting doing the things that Blake might ask them? Although I don't know that. Yeah, it might look that way to him a little bit. But they also have a job to do at the agencies. And so the budget division, where they might be an inch deep on, say, criminal justice issues, they have to depend on the people who are experts in criminal justice to kind of tell them, well, there are some things we could do, and there's some things that are really, if we got rid of them, it would cost you more money.
Sure, but they also might be used to doing things a certain way, and maybe this does get them to look at things another way and go, hey, why are we doing this? And they look around the office and they go, I don't know, it predates me. We just keep doing it this way.
Well, that's true, which is why back in the 70s, at the federal level, they started talking about things like zero-based budgeting, right? Mm-hmm. Where you force the agencies to come back every year and justify every penny they're spending as if it was a new program. It doesn't work because it's too complicated to do and too time-consuming, and you're really taking the agency away from actually performing their function and just, doing this exercise. But no, the point is well taken. There are always efficiencies. There are always things you could be doing better and cheaper. You just have to keep pushing and probing for those things. But also listening, budget has to listen to, but if we do that, there might be an effect on program delivery, and that's also important, right?
Wait, budget listens? I thought budget just tells everybody how it's going to be.
There is the telling part, and there is the listening part.
Is that a 50-50 split?
I think with someone like Blake, who's been doing this forever and has the perspective of the legislative years of experience he had, I think it's in his DNA to understand those kinds of things, like where you can push and where, you might have to say, no, that would sacrifice a program that's important to the governor. So, yeah, he has to weigh those things constantly, and he has to make sure the folks in the division are doing that, which he is doing. But there's always efficiencies out there. You just have to go find them. But also know when it's overkill. There was a budget director who had an expression which he used constantly, which is he didn't want proposals to write smaller and save ink. That was his way of saying, you know, don't come in here with 100 things that are going to save $20 that are going to cause the agencies to go crazy
Sure.
and not help the governor. My philosophy on that, after I kind of evolved with him through that, was no, you don't want to do those things, but don't rule them out, because sometimes there's some bigger nugget underneath that. So you want to see everything, but you don't want to get bogged down in stuff that's going to be controversial and save $5.
Well, given how challenging it is, based on what we've talked about, to actually find efficiencies, to push against the institutional interests that there are for maintaining the status quo, do you think we as reporters have not recognized or done a good enough job sort of celebrating how much money the state is going to save and is saving from the transition of the administration of the CDPAP program? Because we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars this year, and $1 billion, I think, is the number they're looking at for the future, and that's in the face of legislative opposition. And I wonder whether reporters have, recognized what a big deal that was just to get through.
It's a very big deal. And if you would have asked me what are the things now that they're doing that are what I would say are answer that question as a progressive governor, what are the things you think you can do? None of them are easy. CDPAP is really hard to do. But I think as an outside observer, you're eliminating something that wasn't working. Just wasn't working the way it should.
But that's not a reason to stop things in the eyes of most lawmakers with a variety of different things that exist.
But when times get difficult and when you're actually trying to improve how government functions, those are the things you have to look at.
Sure.
And so I think it was a good move on their part. And look, the legislature, I don't know how controversial this is. Yes, they're against stuff because often they have members who are very close to those programs, who are very close to the administration of those programs, or have constituents in those programs. But that's okay. If the governor could convince them to do it, they're all doing it. And I think that's often what governors have to do. They have to carry the legislature to things that they don't necessarily want to do. But if they did it, they ultimately recognize that there was something there that had to be fixed.
So I'm hoping you can do some governor translation for us, because the governor has drawn a hard line in the sand on increasing income taxes over recent years, and there is seemingly an increased drumbeat to raise some sort of taxes. And this is what she said when she was interviewed on Fox 5's Good Day New York in early December.
Would you veto a tax increase?
I'm not raising income taxes. But anything
Personal,
else,
what about business?
anything else has to go into our budget process. So we're not there yet. We don't know what our needs are. I have to look at the revenues coming in. We're even going to look at how well we're doing with the end of year stock market bonuses. So the bonuses, we get tax revenues from those. So I don't have a clear view of what the resources are coming in, the revenues, and manage that against the Trump cuts.
So does that suggest to you that this is a governor who definitely is opposed to increasing income taxes, but might be on board with other ways of raising revenue, like a potential corporate tax hike?
You're going to hate this answer, but she answered it. And she answered it the right way, in my opinion, which she said, look, she doesn't really know yet This is what they're doing downstairs right now. They're formulating where they got to go. They learn a lot of stuff in January about income tax, and they learn more after even the budget is supposed to be passed by April 1st. So, she's definitely right to be cautious about the number. I think, look, it's the other piece she has to weigh is if revenues look better, does she want to commit to spending out of the existing structure and not have to increase taxes? And I'm sure that's the debate they're having downstairs right now.
Blake always frames his role as, I come up with a bunch of different options, we give it to the governor, they decide. Are they, based on your expectations, giving a whole wide range of A to Z and things that might not fit the governor's ideology? Or do you think those things, based on your own experience, are they tailored to what that governor might have embraced in the past and might embrace in the future?
Two things can be true at the same time, right? Which I think Blake has a responsibility, and he knows this, to give the governor options, right? Some of those options might be things he knows she's going to say no to, or he has a strong belief she's going to say no, or he has a strong belief that her other senior staff will say no to. He still has to do that because, especially when times are difficult, especially when you're going to make difficult decisions, you have to air out some things that might be, they were outside the box last year, but maybe they're not outside the box this year. And maybe you're affecting one group of people that you thought you didn't want to affect, but maybe now you think that's fairer or a better way to accomplish what you want to accomplish. So I think you have to try to put some choices in front of the governor, but you also have to recognize when no is no, and I don't even want to talk about that is I don't even want to talk about that. And I think that's a balancing act that you have to do.
Well, before I let you go, let's talk about some things Bob Megna is up to, because a year ago you were tasked by the legislature and the governor to do this look at the foundation aid formula, and I have jokingly said that you're going to be responsible for the study that was referred to in this recent budget about how do you pay for universal child care moving forward. And I'm curious, is life imitating art or bad comedy yet? Has anyone called you yet in the governor's office to say, Bob, we need you again. Do a study for us, buddy.
We are happy always at Rockefeller to be helpful to the folks on the governor and her staff, and to Blake and the budget division. Are we looking at some child care stuff? Yeah.
In the context of that study and the $1 million that's appropriated, if you can get a slice of that, that's nice.
Yes, but and we've been working with some folks at CUNY, and we've been trying to be helpful. So. Whether that ends up in the context of the study or not, I'm not 100% sure.
Is there anything else you want to tell me about that?
No, look, it's a perfect example, in a way, of what we were talking about, which is the governor clearly has made that a priority. Okay, quite honestly, depending on how you do it, and everyone knows this, it's not the cheapest thing in the world to do.
What's $14 billion between friends?
Well, it doesn't have to be $14 billion, and things can be phased in, and smart people on the second floor in DOB and the legislature can figure out ways to do this that probably cut the cost down but keep the benefit pretty high. That's for them. But if you're going to do that, and there is going to be a cost to it, then you do have to look at other things you're doing and say, well, can we keep doing that the way we're doing it? Which is why Blake is talking about the things he's talking about.
And lastly, about 2 years ago now, you were appointed to, the Commission on the Future of Healthcare. and I'm a little worried about some of the people there because I haven't heard or seen anything from them. I'm thinking about putting out a milk carton with some of their faces on it. I'm glad to see you're doing okay. Any updates that we should know about on that front? Anything coming out soon that we should keep an eye out for?
I don't know timing right now, but yes, the group has been working pretty diligently.
Phew. I was worried because we haven't heard. We had Sherry on early, but we haven't been able to get a response lately.
I think everyone's healthy as far as I know.
That's great.
And look, it's a complicated issue, and I think, I don't think I'm giving anything away by saying that the commission's work is filtering into, decision making about, healthcare decisions that have to be made.
You think it's already informing stuff?
I do. I do.
Is there any decisions that have been made that you would point to and say, boy, that really smells like the future of healthcare commission?
No.
I had to look up the name again.
You would have to tell me.
We call it the CFHC for short here.
I don't know. I think maybe that would be true this year, but I'm not 100% positive. But I know that's how people in the governor's office are thinking about it. They're thinking about, okay, what can we take from the work that's been done to help inform policy?
So it sounds like it's more of an ongoing rolling process and not necessarily like, hey, here's what we're going to come out with a big report.
I think, again, I defer to Angela and to the folks, to the chair who you talked about. They probably are more aware of kind of specific timing, but
sure.
Work is getting done.
Well, you finished your soda, so that means it's time to let you go. We've been speaking with Bob Megna. He's a former state budget director who's had pretty much every job here in Albany and now is the president of the Rockefeller Institute of Government. Bob, thank you so much for spending your time and sharing insights with us. I really appreciate it.
Oh, no, Dave, it was fun. Thank you. So by reducing...
We'll cut that right out.
Good.
Or I might save it and use it as an outro clip.
You could. I have a cold.